So I think you're a real leader. See, I think you're a real leader because you are not afraid to say what you mean and do what you say.
Yes.
My book, that makes you a leader.
Exactly. Even when it's inconvenient. We were actually, Robert, I think we were just talking about this recently. You know, when you're a business owner like you and I are, and
Correct.
something goes wrong with one of our employees, it doesn't matter if it's the employee that messed it up. It's my fault. Are they in a position that they should be? Was I doing a good job of managing them? How did I help contribute to this problem ultimately? Because I'm the one who's going to be responsible for it.
Right.
And so
I understand.
I love that. I love that radical. I call it radical responsibility. It's
radical responsibility. And look, to go through this. So, I mean, to what he ended up doing, right? I mean, Argentina's inflation was 287%. It's now 8.8% inflation.
I mean, that's outrageous. But the Fed can't do it.
Wait, but in 4 months, right? 4 months in January, he goes from November, he devalues the currency, right? He cuts the budget by the way, he was an economics professor. So who clearly knows nothing about monetary policy, of course, right?
Obviously.
As opposed to someone like President Biden, who has been in office forever and hasn't held a real job outside the public sector forever. So in January, they recorded a $589 million budget surplus 4 months after taking office. So if they can balance the budget there, why can't we balance the budget here?
Because we have too many PhDs in charge.
Well, see, I have a much simpler theory.
Oh.
Trying to wean a politician off of spending OPM, other people's money or tax dollars, is like trying to wean a heroin addict off of a drug, right? I mean, as long as they're spending other people's money, as long as they're spending other people's money and it's not, their money, but I sit here and I look at that and they called him. He was going to be a tyrant. He was a radical. He was going to destroy the economy. The IMF even warned that he was going to be disastrous. But now they've actually now they've released the loan bailout money that the IMF wouldn't reach out. And again, deregulated, got rid of price controls. Now, I just sit here and go, that's what leadership is. And that's what we don't have. We have an ideological agenda. I mean, the HHS, and we'll talk about it later in the show, Becerra, the Secretary Becerra was testifying before Congress, and basically he's punishing hospitals that will not do transgender surgery on kids they won't get government federal funding. Yep. And not only does it hurt the hospital in general, it means they're not going to get Medicare funding, Medicaid funding. That's an ideological agenda. That's not leadership.
Yep. Literally, if people don't realize how much actually the federal government sends to hospitals for indigent healthcare, as they call it. Basically, people who can't afford it, illegal immigrants, homeless people. You fill in the blank. It is absolutely astonishing to me.
All right. And I want to segue because we have a guest on the show. We have Delaware GOP chairwoman, Julianne Murray, because the other ideological thing being driven here is Second Amendment. They're taking away your Second Amendment rights. And Delaware just passed, signed by the governor, another gun grab we want to talk about. So I know folks were jumping around a lot, but we'll come
back to it.
We'll come back to it. But if Ms. Murray is here,
yes, she is.
We would like to bring her into the stream, please.
All right, here we go. Hello. Oh, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Ms. Chairwoman.
Double check in your settings that your mic is set up. We can't hear you, but if you can.
But this is why we love technology.
We do. It's so good. Yes,
actually,
you love in the chat. Let's see. Not muted on my end. What you can do, Julian, something very common is if it's just funky, just leave and come back. Sometimes that fixes it. All right.
Okay.
All right. All right. We're going to bring her back in the meantime.
Right. And so just when you bring her back in, so the Delaware law that they passed, let me see what they end up calling it, the Handgun Qualifier Purchase Permit, HQPP. Right.
Okay.
And of course, it's the same tropes, right? It's going to reduce gun violence, suicides, homicide, and crack down on illegal straw purchases.
Of course.
Where have we heard that before?
It's going to fix everything. Okay, Chairwoman,
Right,
can we hear you now? Oh, no. Oh, goodness. Okay. At the bottom gear icon with the settings, and it has the right microphone selected. It should be a microphone option.
If you look at the box, the rectangular box on the bottom, there's in the middle, it says settings.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. Benjamin is going to send you a link in the private chat to our green room to help see if we can work it out. You got that, Benjamin? All right.
And Miss Chairwoman, we will get this to work. So
All right. So do you want to go back to the? Go ahead.
Let's go back because the leadership issue is a broad-based issue, right? Because it's not just leadership in this country, but you know, if you step back and the lack of leadership in this country, starting with fiscal responsibility, because if you don't pay, I mean, we can talk about lack of leadership on lots of levels, the border, other areas, monetary policy and fiscal responsibility, because the connection is runaway government spending is what caused the Argentine economy to tank for for 20 years, and I might be off for a couple of years, and they were the pristine example of an economic engine in South America for so long. And then obviously the leftists get in there. It's all government run and government controlled, and they're printing money, so to speak. And this runaway government spending causes the economy to collapse and the living wage to collapse and the level of poverty to rise.
Yep.
In 4 months, he comes back in, right, and cuts government spending. The analogy to this country is the same. We have a $34 trillion debt, U.S. debt. We have a $1.7 trillion deficit spending, which means we're spending more. We're heading towards Argentina.
Yeah.
So if they can do it in Argentina, why can't we? Because that's where real leadership starts.
Yeah, there's no political will for it. Our politicians are cowards.
Of both parties, by the way.
Oh,
of both parties.
Absolutely. The fact that we can't have a serious conversation about entitlements when that is like 75% of the budget, and we have a population collapse that will not support Social Security and Medicare, plus all the corruption and fraud. Like that is a no for you to talk about. Right. And it's like,
so we're gonna give this a label. The label, what we want and what we're asking for in this country is what I would call the great entitlement debate. We need to debate what should be the role of the federal government, what services should the federal government provide, what services should they not provide, and on services that they do provide, can the private sector provide it more efficiently?
And that great question. Can they provide it more efficiently and more effectively? You know, that's been my big thing is, you know, there's a lot of government programs that are meant to take the place of basic human empathy and compassion. Like the government cannot replace human beings helping other human beings. The benefits.
Well, they can neutralize it, though, which is what I would argue that they've attempted to do by sanitizing the process. Yeah. And taking the functions that used to be provided by towns and churches and synagogues and temples and whatnot in terms of families and replacing them with the government, right? Yep. And the government doesn't do it that efficiently. So the problem, again, the great entitlement debate, and the last number I heard was actually 2/3 of the economy is either healthcare or Social Security.
Yep.
Now, I could be wrong with my numbers. I haven't really boned up on those lately. But at the end of the day, it is of the federal budget. It's at least 2/3 of the federal budget.
It is.
that is off the table for discussion. So so when everyone talks about it, they're only talking about the 1/3 anyway. What about the 2/3? Because you're now getting to the point where at this rate, the deficit, debt alone is going to exceed the GDP. The deficit alone is going to exceed the GDP.
The interest payments alone,
Right.
I think it's something like 10 or another 10% of our budget or something like that is just the interest payments.
Yeah, don't hold me to the numbers.
But you guys go to the world debt or the U.S. debt clock, and it'll show you there. It's outrageous.
Right. So that's one form of leadership, and the parallels between the U.S. heading towards what Argentina just left with a new presidential leadership, right, is should not be lost on America. I mean, you don't don't cry for me, Argentina. Well, don't cry for me, the U.S. Right? I mean, I'd rather right. I mean, it's just
Well, and speaking of not crying for me, we're going to be working with ASIC on the Israel Appreciation Day, and so let's
July 10th.
July 10th
in Washington, D.C. IsraelAppreciationDay.com. Roll them.
All right.
Why Israel Appreciation Day? Because no one is telling the Israel story about why Israel's existence is so important, not just as a Jewish state and not just as an ally of the United States, but for all the positive achievements Israel has contributed to the world in science, technology, medicine, human rights, religious freedoms, rule of law, democracy, and so on. We need to start winning the public relations information war and change the narrative, especially among our younger generations. We need to get the information out there and arm those people who understand the seminal importance of Israel to the world. And being the Jewish homeland doesn't begin to tell that story of why Israel is so important. It's something we all can come together on, and honestly, it's something we all must come together on. It is imperative the general public understands the nature of the very special relationship between Israel and the United States and Israel's importance to the world. So please join us on July 10th in Washington, D.C. as we celebrate Israel Appreciation Day. For those who can't be there in person, we'll be streaming live on the web at IsraelAppreciationDay.com. Never again is now.